Yes, hi there. I was just want to do a couple things. I want to comment on the video itself, and also some of the comments that I kind of, there's back and forth between Canada and America. And first of all, right off the top, the thing with Tucker, um, his comment is in terms of our Canadian identity that we things whether they're artists, comedians, and so forth, go to the States or live in the States. That's quite true. I mean, Canadians know that to be a fact. The simple reality is we have a population of 30 million people, and yours is, America is 10 times greater. And certainly those pursuing wealth, the vast wealth that the pure dollars and cents, whether it's Hollywood or music and so forth, you have to break into the American market. You just do. If you are Bryan Adams, for the sake of argument, in the mid '80s when Reckless was the big album, well, he might sell 3 million, 4 million copies, let's say, in Canada, which is a hell of a lot of copies on a population of 30 million. I mean, 30 million is everybody. That's the those that are, above. There's a certain population that's say between the age of 50 and 100, and are going to be into swing music and won't know Bryan Adams from a hole in the ground, so they're not going to buy his records. And of course, the first, from birth to 12-year-olds, the Spice Girl crowd kind of thing, they're not going to care about Bryan Adams. So his market is going to be the teenage angst and those that remember the teenage angst. So in the 20s and 30s and so forth, and that's his market, pretty much, at the time. So touring the States, being into the States is huge. Getting onto MTV, we have much music here, but getting onto MTV and whatnot is huge. There's no real, nothing spectacular about that. Neil Young has lived in Canada, in America rather, for 40 odd years. Pretty much ever since the Buffalo Springfield days. But he's Canadian, So, that stuff kind of gets overplayed a little bit. Jim Carrey, Michael Myers, Dan Aykroyd, John Candy. They're entertainers, and the entertaining epicenter of the world, by and large, is America, is Hollywood, California, and so forth, or New York for Broadway and so forth. So that's just the way it goes. But I think in terms of Canadians and Americans, I think it runs pretty much along longitude and latitude lines. I don't think I grew up in Northern Ontario, and I don't think my life, my views, what was around me essentially would be that much different had I grown up in northern Minnesota, or Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania, or upstate New York, or Illinois, or Missouri. Same shit, different pile. We're hunters, a lot of snowmobilers, a lot of outdoorsmen, a lot of, can-do, those that, a lot of do-it-yourselfers, a lot of, that kind of thing. A lot of community. Community is very important, so there's that. I think the farmers in the prairies share a lot with a guy in Manitoba, a farmer in Manitoba, and a farmer in Nebraska, or a farmer in Iowa. They got the same beef. They got the same problem. Their accents might change, but Christ, man, they're from their farm equipment to their pickup truck, and all the way along the line, they're basically the same. So the only thing that Canada really doesn't have, it's the same thing, I guess, when you go to BC and Oregon, or Washington State and so forth. Really, or to the East Coast. I've driven through New England, and New England it's like the Maritimes. New Hampshire very much like Muskoka, actually. Where, oddly enough, Tucker, I mean, where Tom Hanks spends the summers? Where Kurt Russell spends the summers? Goldie Hawn? They spend them in Muskoka. Lake Muskoka. Lake Russell. That's Canada. I mean, doesn't mean that, Canada's superior to America in terms of summer destination. It's just, that's where they go in the summer. Doesn't make them a bad person or a bad American. That's absolutely ridiculous. Or to use your phrase, that's retarded. So I'd like to stop this ridiculous, America versus Canada thing. It isn't. It's got nothing to do with that. Most of the problems that Canada has with America is they believe, we're talking the powers that be, somehow believe that the world is a buffet. And they can pick and choose and take what they need as they need it at will. Because they're America. And America's the greatest country in the world. So, who's going to oppose us? If we want your power, we'll take your power. And as a Canadian, I'm sorry. You're our neighbor. You're our greatest, naturally going to be our greatest trading partner. We supply power to you. We do have the largest collection of fresh water in the Western world. We export. You import the most gas from Canada than you do from any other source. I mean, I don't know how many Americans really know that. I think that would come as kind of a bit of a shock. I think most Americans think that you're totally dependent on the Middle East. You're not. You're not. So, let's get past this, guys. Let's get past this. Canada versus the U.S. Jesus, man. We're the same. In so many ways. But anyone who's traveled out to Canada knows that the fact that our taxes are higher, yes. And that we have socialized healthcare, yes. And while Canadians will complain about the cost of tuition to college, it's nowhere near like it is in the States. I mean, I went to college in 1986. My tuition was $1,600. That same year, or maybe a year later, a fellow from my hometown got drafted, got a scholarship to go play for Cornell. And he went on a hockey scholarship, of course, because if he would have went as a student, the tuition at the time, and this is, as I say, this is 20 years ago, was something like 20 grand, $20,000. What's up with that, man? That's the difference. The difference is, in Canada, if you go to the Vanier Cup, which is our final, determines the best of university football, the quarterback playing for the Western Mustangs might be pre-med. These guys don't go to the school to play football. I mean, they go to school to play football, but they're legitimate students. They're not, they're not they're truly student athletes. And that's not the case in the States. How many football players playing in the NCAA graduate with a degree? How many? What's the percentage? Does that matter to those that follow college football? Do they give a shit about that? In Canada, it really doesn't work that way. So that's a small difference. There's a difference there you guys can chew on. But I just wanted to get in there and say the overall differences, we are very similar. In most ways, we just disagree with your foreign policy. In terms of empire building. You don't have a king. You have a president. He's elected by you. Hold him to task. Have them represent you. That's all. Take care.